The Search Podcast USA Edition series is sponsored by Ascen. Ascen is a top employer of record in North America that exclusively helps staffing and recruitment agencies hire contractors compliantly throughout the US and Canada. Ascen's all-in-one white-label platform handles onboarding, timesheets, payroll, benefits, insurance, invoicing, and optional financing so you can grow quickly in the US and Canada. Start growing your staffing agency in the US today with Ascen. Visit us at ascen.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Search Podcast. I'm Elliott Manning, the Managing Director of Kayman Recruitment Group. This week, a bit different as for an episode, and a bit cheeky of me, actually. I asked one of our own who has joined us recently to be on the podcast, and I wanted him to tell everyone about his experience moving to the US. He's from the UK. He can tell you where, and we can go into that in a bit more detail. But ultimately, to allow us to understand what it's like to transition yourself personally, your life, and everything over to the American market as a recruiter in particular. But I'll let you take an introduction, mate.
Yes, so I'm originally from the UK, as Elliot said. I was from the Lakes, lived in Manchester for about 9 or so years
Yeah.
before I then moved over to the US. I moved over to Charlotte, coming up to 2.5 years ago now.
You've forgotten your name, though.
Oh, yeah. How well can you edit this?
Go on.
I'm Jonathan.
Yep. Awesome.
I originally from the UK, moved over from Manchester. I was there for 9 years before I then moved over to Charlotte in North Carolina, which was just over 2.5 years ago now.
Awesome. How long have you been in recruitment for, mate? I should know the answer to that.
Forever. 7.5 years now.
Yeah. At what point,
Yeah.
Jonathan, we'll get into it, mate. We'll get into it. At what point did you decide I need to be in America and that's where I see my long-term future?
So I think after a couple of years into recruitment, my first shop was a smaller shop. But I transitioned into sort of internal, and I was speaking to a lot of recruiters in the UK that were moving overseas, and obviously saw a lot of businesses doing the same thing. That was the US, right? So naturally, I was curious. So I started to have more conversations to understand why, and then I think just understanding about the earning potential and the opportunity, especially given what I did, right, being recruiting recruiters. So yeah, there was that was sort of the real reason, at least initially, I had the interest in exploring. And then once I did, I just found there's all these businesses, they're growing massively. There's a huge appetite for hiring recruiters from agencies in the US and ones moving over from overseas. So it made sense for me as a career move, I think was the initial interest.
Awesome. What did you know? Like, what were you hearing about it? Like, what was the excitement about the US? Because we all know what it is, but it's interesting to
Yeah.
hear from you.
I think just speaking to recruitment leaders, and it was just the emphasis on growth within the US,
Yeah.
right? And it was like, right, we're going to go over, we're going to build out in this market. But then you look at it, right, and you think, well, okay, the US, where are you going to go? New York initially, but then you realize how big the US is and how much opportunity there actually is.
Yeah.
So I think it was that. I almost felt like it was at the start of that curve, right? Yes, there were businesses that were here, but it still felt very early on in the growth within the US. So it's just that huge opportunity, I think, was really it.
Did you know where you wanted to go in the States? Like which location, or did you have a preference? Was that easy or hard, or was it more just you had to follow where the business was?
So I had options. I had options. One being New York, the other being Charlotte, and then also Austin. I had been to New York before. I sort of ruled that out. It just wasn't sort of my cup of tea. I moved from the Lake District to Manchester. I would have gone to London if I wanted a New York style city, right? So looked at Charlotte, had never visited, but knew people over here and had only ever heard great things. So yeah, Charlotte was essentially the decision that was made, having again like never been.
Do
But
you wish you went over there yourself to have a look at it before you chose to live there? Do you feel like that's important for someone moving to the US to go and explore, visit, and really kind of get a feel for where they're moving to?
I would say yes and no. So I think it's important to go over and to visit the US because it's nice to get a sense of a place, right? But I think a holiday only really gives you so much. Like if I'd made the decision to move somewhere in the US based on how it felt on holiday, I probably would have ended up in New York or Santa Monica, right? So
Yeah.
until you sort of live it, it's different. But I would always encourage people to get over to the US if they haven't already been over. But my attitude was, hey, let's do it. I'd rather go to the US and hate it and move back to the UK than stay in the UK and just sit and wonder what if. So I would encourage anyone who's curious to just give it a go. Because worst case scenario, you're back where you were.
I was going to say, like, what was the biggest worry for you? What were you scared of the most doing it? Because when I think about moving, and everyone says to me, "Oh, go to the US, go to South Africa, like all these places," I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't really want to be honest with you. Like, I love I'd love to, but I haven't got enough in me to say do it. But
yeah.
what was stopping you? What was blocking you, or wasn't there at all?
So I think family, right? Initially, and I'm sure many would say the same. Is that's always a consideration, but I just thought, while I'm only say 2 hours away from my family, how often did I realistically see them, and how much time did I spend with them? Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, family was probably one of the main reasons that I sort of didn't initially jump, but it didn't take all that much convincing. I mean, my mum, for example, was like, "You'd be an idiot not to go. I'd rather visit you in Charlotte than visit you in Manchester."
Yeah,
Was essentially what she
yeah,
said.
fair enough. I guess look, there's a lot of recruiters that think about moving to the States, and
Yeah,
that's a big concern for them is leaving family and their life behind and
yeah,
their friends as well. They get a bit worried about their friends and their FOMO of what they're going to miss out on. And I get it,
yeah.
but the life that they can create being in the American side, like, let's talk about that. You went over to North Carolina, to Charlotte. What did you do on
Mhm.
day one? Like, what was the plan? Like, were you like sitting, standing and thinking like, oh shit, like what happens
What
now?
what was the plan? Well, day one was walking around the supermarket, just in absolute awe because it's exactly like you see on TV. But yeah, the plan I think initially was once we got sort of settled in the apartment, and that's one thing I would encourage people to do is to sort of try and get some time over in the city you're moving into beforehand, so you can sort of scope out locations and apartments and so on. So it was really getting settled in the apartment was the initial plan. Um, and then, yeah, from there, I mean, fortunately, I knew a couple of people when I moved over, so that was
Yeah.
sort of the first point of contact. But um, yeah, then it was just sort of once you got in and up and running with work, which I was sort of only a week in, it was then more about sort of branching out, right, and meeting people. So
Well,
kind of made a lot of effort to
let's
get out
talk
and about.
let's talk go back into that in a minute. I guess what I want to know is like, you went over there, you got the apartment, you kind of figured that out, you got a lease,
Yeah,
I'm assuming, and you went to a supermarket and bought loads of food and enjoyed that. What about
yeah.
setting up all your bills and like getting yourself in a position where you're living there properly?
Yeah, it's funny because then you got to sort of take yourself back to a time where maybe you initially left home or university, right, and go through all of that again. So I think the first thing was phone. Actually, we went in and got our phones sorted. All relatively easy, in all honesty. No different to the UK, right? You go in, you get your phone set up, then you're good to go. There's a process, and I think that's important to research and understand. Like you need to go and get a social security number before you can open a bank account. You need a bank account to then set up your pay, and so there are things you need to do and you need to do in order. But it's relatively self-explanatory, and a quick Google search sort of gives you a lot of insight as well. So it's
Get
not
ChatGPT
too
to tell you
difficult.
these days, can't you?
Yeah, ask Claude.
Yeah, or Claude, rather. Um, Going over to the US, I'm asked about this a lot, and candidates
Yeah.
call us and they say, different things. What about money? I don't need to know specifics, I suppose, at this point, but how much money do you think someone needs to move over to the US to be comfortable in their savings, or they don't need any money? They can just go over there and just start fresh. Like, do you think that's a big
Yeah.
thing to be weary of?
Um, Not necessarily, right? Because you can find apartments that are furnished. So that sort of eases the concern of coming in and needing to buy furniture, right? And yes, you won't have any credit, so you'll need to likely pay a month up front. So I think honestly, $5,000 would probably be more than enough for you to get over to the US, to get everything set up, to get a phone, to get an apartment, to pay your deposit, and then you're good to go at that point.
Until you get your first paycheck,
It's
yeah.
not crazy. It's not crazy.
Do you, since you've been over there, you've been working now and you've got yourself in a comfortable position,
Yeah.
friends and getting out and about. And I spoke to someone in New York about this a couple of years ago on the podcast, and she said that she had to kind of get herself involved with like yoga classes and
Yeah.
Pilates and, go to the local gym and, even like a run club kind of thing just to meet people.
Yeah.
You have to get yourself out there. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're never going to meet anyone, and you can't be afraid, I suppose, to talk to people either, because
Yes.
again, you won't get to know anyone. So is that a kind of
Yeah.
similar experience to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You are in a sense back to sort of square one with your social circle, right? So it is important, I think, to get out there. Like my wife moved over with me. She made a great effort to go to like gym classes and go out and grab a coffee and just chat to people. And it is one of the most important things I would say, especially early on, is get involved in something. Like for me, that was golf because I was going over with one guy. You were playing as a four, you're meeting two new people every round, right? So just get involved and have some sort of hobby. And then naturally from there, you'll meet like minded people, right? And you can sort of grow your social circle from there. But I would say that's really important early on. It's easy to fall into the trap of just staying in your sort of professional circle,
Yeah.
right? You move over, there's probably people there. That's who you sort of socialize with. I think it's very important to break that early on and branch out.
And how much of a difference have you seen, not necessarily for you, but for recruiters that are
Mm.
over there that you've worked with or spoken to or seen? Like, how much of a difference has being in the US made to their career as a whole?
Mm. Huge, huge, huge. Again, it just comes with opportunity, right? I think a lot of people who are in the UK know that it's a relatively saturated market. And like I say about the US is yes, okay, everyone came over to the East Coast, but there's a lot more of America to explore. So I speak to recruiters, funnily enough, there's quite a few that have come over as like first hires for businesses in Charlotte. And they're just saying it's like a night and day difference. Just the ease of conversations and bringing in new business and having conversations with candidates, like it's a breath of fresh air, is how a
Yeah.
lot of them have described it. And then naturally, right from there, your career is going to grow. You make more placements, you earn more commission, your network expands, you bring in more clients, the circle kind of continues. So
I think
yeah, huge.
one thing I've noticed, and I think people forget this, and I just wanted to be, I suppose, the not devil's advocate in this, but when you're in the UK and you look at what you can earn in the US, it's amazing, right? You can earn a big base salary, you could earn fees of X, Y, and Z, but
Yeah.
you're in the UK, so you're thinking about what that conversion is from a pound to dollar like situation. But then when
Yeah.
you're actually in the US, and something I've noticed a lot is, you've got taxes to pay, in some states they're awful, in some states they're really good. You've got the cost
Mm.
of living, which is kind of like, equates to roughly what you're earning to an extent in some aspects. Is that true? Like, I guess because a lot of people are a little bit, yeah, I suppose disillusioned by the fact that you're not in the US, so it does look more appealing.
Yes, agreed, agreed. And I can speak best for Charlotte, right?
Yeah,
Like the cost of living, I would say, is comparable to what it was for me in Manchester,
yeah,
but I'm earning a lot more,
yeah,
right? Like I'm somewhat knowledgeable of New York because it's a market I recruited in for a long time, and I appreciate living in the city is just going to be abnormally expensive. But New York's New York; people want to be there. But yeah, I do think that you can argue the cost of living is higher. I mean, it took me forever and a day to stop looking at things in pounds and pennies. Like,
yeah.
I've only sort of in the last 6 months sort of started looking at it as dollars and stopped doing the conversion. But it's not as expensive as I feel people believe it is when they like going to the US on holiday. It's a very different experience, right? You go into a restaurant when you're on holiday, you're not going to Aldi. So the reality of it, I think, is very, very different to what a lot of people believe.
It's like New York. Everyone's like, it's so expensive. It's so expensive. I'm like, yes, it is
Yeah.
expensive, but how expensive can you make it yourself is the
Yeah.
question, because you don't have to shop
Yeah.
at Whole Foods every day.
Right.
You don't have to be putting yourself in that position. You don't have to get an apartment in
Yeah.
Midtown Manhattan either. There
Yes.
is plenty of
Yeah.
options over there to make it better for you and to make it work.
100%.
So And it depends on that lifestyle that you want to lead. But then if you go to North Carolina, to Texas, Florida, you can lead a completely different lifestyle because the cost difference is
Yeah.
so much, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's massive, but it's a bit less. Um,
Yeah.
any words of advice, Jonathan, mate, on on those recruiters that might be open and entertaining the US market, or even any companies looking to set up over here?
I think on the recruiter front, I would just I would just say have conversations with those that have done it
Yeah,
just to get a real insight. I know obviously we've just spoke about that very thing, right? But only for what, maybe 15 minutes or so. So I'd encourage anyone who's thinking about doing it to have conversations with recruiters that have done it, just because they'll be able to give you insight from the initial visa process all the way through to making the move overseas and
yeah,
whether they've been here 6 months or 6 years, what that has been like. So just have the conversation. And then I think businesses looking to do the set, looking to move over. I think probably much the same, right? There's
yeah,
people like yourself who have worked with businesses that have made the move and grown offices. You did a great post on it only a couple of weeks back. So again, have conversations, understand what the realities of it actually are, because as appealing as it is to a recruiter, it's equally appealing to a business, right? You see more opportunity, you see less saturation, you see higher fees, lower notice periods, and it all seems great, but it's what's the strategy behind that look like?
yeah,
Because the recruitment landscape in the US is very different to the UK. So it's understanding, hey, you're not going to build just a 360 like traditional UK modeled recruitment business over here. That's scalable,
yeah.
right? You need to approach it differently. So yeah, just understanding that, being realistic and having the conversations, I think will massively help.
If you went back in time, is there anything you would have done differently?
Moved sooner.
That's it.
Yeah,
Good answer.
essentially.
Nice.
Yeah,
Perfect. Jonathan, mate.
essentially.
Yeah, look, fair play. Like if that's it, then good. That's a positive. Look,
Yeah.
I appreciate you jumping on the podcast with me, Jonathan. I really like
Happy.
sharing the fact that there's a story there, and ultimately a story that resonates with a lot of recruiters in the market that are thinking about moving over to the States and make a move for themselves in their career. If anyone's got any
Yeah,
questions, please reach out to Jonathan. Like he's one of those
please do.
he just referred to as speak to people that have done it. So get to know him, get asking him some questions. Feel free to ask me from a business point of view, Jonathan from a recruiter point of view, and let
Yeah,
us know where you stand with anything. And mate, appreciate it. I'll let you get back to it.
always. Cheers, buddy. Pleasure.